lot of work with the Agroecology program, which is a very exciting opportunity at FIU. He is the co-director of that Agroecology program and FIU's project lead for the Florida Caribbean Consortium for Agricultural Education and Hispanic Workforce Development. And this is a program that is funded by the federal government, the USDA, and is made up of FIU, Miami-Dade College, St. Thomas University, as well as the Universidad Interamericana de Puerto Rico and other nonprofit and government agencies. Dr. Bhat's research focuses on issues related to the economics of coastal resource management and agroecology. This is a common theme that spans his research, and it's about integrating ecological and economic principles together into a holistic decision-making framework to help promote sustainable resource management and help public policymakers have more insight on what needs to be done to help our environment and its ecology. And I also want to do something a little untraditional with the introduction. In searching for all the different information about Dr. Bhat and the Agroecology program, I came across his Rate My Professors page. And though I don't typically condone Rate My Professors, some very nice things were said that I thought warranted being included in his introduction, including that he is an amazing teacher who really loves his subject and wants you to love what we're talking about. He is friendly and approachable outside of the class and will always answer questions. And he is one of the best professors at FIU. So with those words from his own students, I introduce to you Dr. Mahadev Bhat.
Thank you, Eric. There's a lot of pressure, you put on me with that kind introduction. And you have not read the second, third, and fourth comments in that Rate My Professor page, probably. You picked up probably the top best one.
Those are the first ones that I saw.
Yeah, it's good. So anyway, Eric, thank you. Thank you, Global Learning, as you said. And I've been a great supporter of the Global Learning Initiative at FIU. And also I've been a great beneficiary of that program. Now I teach, co-teach one of the classes, Global Learning Foundation classes, that is Nutrition, Health, and Economic Development. It's co-taught by myself and Dr. Adriana Campa. It has been a very popular class, one of the popular classes, with 120 students every semester almost. Eric also mentioned that I am the co-director of the agroecology program. The other co-director is in attendance here, Dr. J. Chandran is here, and also our agroecology coordinator, Stephanie Alvarez Ventura, is also here. Today we are going to talk about global food security. Okay, very passionate subject, close to my heart. As Eric said, I'm an agriculture economist by training. I have gone to ag school all my life, and later I became an environmental economist after I came to FIU. But we still do a lot of work in agriculture, and I still own my farm back in India. So I go back home quite frequently, and then and enjoy watching my brothers do farming. Basically now, I don't do farming anymore. Today what I'm going to do, there are a couple of articles I sent out, so you can read those. Probably that will come in a later stage. We may not have time to discuss that. I will stop. There are a lot of information here about food security. I'll stop now and then. I'll ask you questions, and then you can engage in the discussion. Okay. How many of you are in the global learning or any type of global learning courses this semester? How many of you? Just raise your hand, don't be shy. Okay, all right. So of course you share the burden of today's discussion here, or share with me the discussion. I'm sure in the very first class of the global learning course, you have been told these three objectives of global learning initiative at FIU. Global awareness, you take any topic, food security, health, travel, tourism, language, even math, science, whatever. Okay, when you are in the global learning in a class, you are expected to achieve these objectives on a given topic. Global awareness, that is to know about that topic, the subject. Perspective, to develop or to define certain perspective. That perspective, that's your perspective, which may not coincide with perspective of somebody else, someone from another country or another society or culture, which is perfectly fine. But it's important to have certain perspective or viewpoint about that topic. The knowledge and view or perspective together will equip, hopefully, to take certain action if you care to, if you feel responsible, if you are passionate about that subject. Okay, that is the engagement, that's the action, that's where that's the last part of your discussion. Okay, I hope by the end of this class, I hope that we'll kind of touch upon all those three aspects. Okay, definitely first one and second one, and we'll see how much you can do with the third one. Okay, food security. Let's get some basic definition. Okay, who doesn't like food? I have not met anyone in my life, yet. Okay, so we all like food. That's our basic, sustenance we need to survive. Okay, so food security as a concept, as a phenomenon, or as a process is defined by some thinkers. This definition comes from the World Food Summit. This is a situation that exists when all people, not just few or some, all people at all times have access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food to maintain a healthy and active life. Is that a good definition? So are you comfortable with that definition? Okay. Is it easy? Is it an easy concept? Or how challenging do you think this could be? Very challenging. Okay. To answer that question, let's dissect that concept into components. Okay, it's always go back to the concept, the full picture, but in order to understand that bigger picture, we need to look at the individual components. Okay, so there are three important dimensions. I mean, I view food security as a house. Okay, as a dwelling. So you need at least how many pillars do you need to keep a house stable? What is the minimum number of pillars you need? How many? At least 3, right? The minimum 3. Okay, following the principles of physics. Okay, you can have 4, 5, 10, 15, 20. Okay, as many as you wish. No, that's better, but at least minimum you need 3. Okay, these are the 3 components, 3 pillars of food security. Food availability, that means food has to be there. There has to be adequate supply of food. Okay, that's something everybody understands easily. It's not a problem. Access to food. How many of you think that access to food is just as important as availability of food? Yes. Yes. Okay. I said yes, right? How many more? Okay. Why do you think access is important?
Because if it's available but you can't get it,
okay,
then what's the sense? It would be like it's not available.
Okay. What are some of the reasons that you can't get the food? You can't access the food?
Probably the food that you want, like the healthier food.
Okay, healthier food, there's a choice. Okay,
yeah, you can't afford
there's a
it.
choice here. Okay, that kind of goes into the third category, that's fine. Okay, choice. Okay, you're saying something?
No, I was saying affordability.
Affordability. Okay, that's the price, the cost of food, right? Okay. Okay.
Different amount of varieties of foods.
Okay, so you want limited or you want variety? You want limited choice. Okay, variety of. Okay, any other response? Yes.
What about the line? There might be rationing going on, so
Okay.
they can't have access to it. It might be available, but certain people have control of it.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
The quality of the food.
Okay.
The quality,
Qualities of the food.
fresh.
Okay. All right. So, but how does that relate to access or access and affordability? Yes.
The access might be part of whether the healthiness of the food is affected by pollutants introduced in the distribution stage
Okay.
and not just in
Okay.
the food production stage.
Okay. So that's a much bigger on a point, issue. What you're saying is that the quality of the food will ultimately affect the availability of the food. You may produce a lot of food, but because of the impurity, all the food that you produce may not be actually available or suitable.
Or even deterioration.
Right. Okay.
Or something you probably don't talk about too much, like the privatization of the food source.
Okay.
So
All right. So some people control food, and that goes back to one of the points that you brought up. Okay. Some people may be hoarding food. This is very common. Okay. In fact, this reminds me of a famous the statement made by one of the well-known economists, a Nobel Prize economist from India, named Amartya Sen. He studied on the food systems of different world, especially developing countries. And in one of the books, he said that the nature does not create a famine, but governments and institutions and humans create famine because of the way the food gets distributed, the way the food gets hoarded, illegally most of the time. Okay. So those are all important points that will ultimately affect the access to food. Okay. Remember the point somebody brought up, the cost, the price. Okay. There's a lot of discussion about that. Okay. This one again, this is the same slide as the previous one. The three components, three pillars, but it goes into specific aspects relating to each of the pillars. For example, food availability means production, distribution, and exchange. So all those things that you just touched upon. Food access, affordability. You said it right. Affordability, allocation, and preference. The choice. You talked about choice. You talked about preference. You talked about affordability. And then the utilization, that is nutritional value, social value, food safety. There's a whole host of issues there. Okay. Now, how serious is food security issue? We are talking about food security here. Is it an issue? Is it of concern? Nowadays, we talk about a lot of security issues, national security. Okay. This morning, I was on the radio. I was listening to cyber security issues. Okay. Of course, income security, job security. These are all important issues, security issues, right? But when it comes to food, do we really have that concern, or is it worthy of attention?
yes. Yeah.
How many of you think it's a serious issue now today? Okay. All right. So an overwhelming majority here. Okay. And the question is why we need to dissect that question a little bit further. Okay. One of the three pillars we just talked about is food affordability, right? See what has happened here in the last 20 years. January 1990. Okay. This is the World Monthly Food Price Index. Okay, from January 90 to December 2012. Okay, just a month ago, 2 months ago. All right, and this is scaled to 2002-2004. Okay, this price, this is an index which has the base of 2002 to 2004. Okay, that means in the year 2002, it's about $100, if you will. Okay, and now see that from 1990 to almost January 2003, end of 2003, 2004 maybe. Okay, food price was kind of stable worldwide. It was very stable. Okay, in the last 4 or 5 years, see what has happened. Okay, I have circled the top, the heights or the price there. Okay, in 2007, there was the first time the world, the society, human society, experienced a sudden hike in food prices. You can see it's almost 2005, 2006, it's almost doubled. Okay, it's almost doubled. I will tell you the reason why, but before we answer that reason, let's first think about the seriousness of it. What's the implication of sudden food price or a drastic rise in food prices? what does that, would that affect you individually? We are here in the US, okay? Would that matter? How many of you really, I know you all, almost all of you are probably were adults, but you were buying food around 2006, 2007, you were already into purchasing foods. Did you ever feel that food price, increased food price was a burden and an economic burden on you? Yes. What do you think? Yes.
Yes.
It was a burden. Okay. I'm not surprised that most of you are not responding to this question as yes. Okay. There's a reason for that. I'm not trying to single out you out over here. Right. So here in the U.S., on average, okay, these numbers may will change, all the time. Okay. On average, we spend what percent of our income goes into into buying food? Yeah.
It would depend on your class right now.
Right.
If
You're right. I'm talking on average. Okay. On average, 15, 20%. If you're in the upper income class, it may be 5% or maybe 1%, depending on how much money you make. Okay. On average, around that. If you are in an average household in Afghanistan or Burundi or Nigeria, okay, or Peru, Bolivia, okay, the percent of income that households spend on food consumption is very high. 50, 60, 70%. Again, this number, don't quote me, okay? The number is in that ballpark. If the food prices increase by 50% or 100% or 150% in some cases, think about the impact on their income. So that means if a family is spending 60, 70%, if the food prices go up by 100%, what happens? Their entire income now has to be spent on food, or they had to be starving. Okay, both outcomes are quite possible, and that's what happened in 2006, 2007. Why it happened? There are a variety of the reasons. Energy prices were going up because fuel is an important. The fertilizer, for example, chemicals are used heavily in agriculture. When the energy prices, fossil fuel prices go up, that will have an impact on the cost of food production. Okay, that's one of the reasons. Or if the supply is not increasing at the same pace as the prices or food demand, okay, obviously the gap between supply and demand will be wider, which is going to put pressure on food prices. Okay, Russia, especially in 2007, 2008, one of the largest wheat producers had drought. Okay, so all these reasons together made the price go up, food prices go up drastically. In the following years, we had a very good year in terms of food production, in terms of the weather. Okay, so the food production increased, the prices came down. But this was a world crisis. When this happened first time, everybody noticed it. But in 2010 and 11, food prices kept back up again. And not many people noticed this time. What does that mean? We are kind of becoming used to this phenomenon, right? We are getting used to this phenomenon. And just this year, the past cropping season, that's in 2012, okay? I don't know how many of you have noticed, there was a major phenomenon in U.S. agriculture, major episode in U.S. agriculture. That is drought in the Midwest. Midwest is the agriculture bowl of the United States. And because of the drought, corn production kind of dipped drastically. Okay? If I get time, I will talk about the effect of corn production, corn prices and all that on our food system later. Okay? Now, the people are interested, okay, we talked about food security, we defined, we gave kind of the signs of the pressure of food security or insecurity. Now let's get some basic numbers out of our way. Okay? We want to know where the food insecure people are, where do they live. Okay? and what is their distribution. Okay. Here, this table gives you the estimates and projections of food insecure people in the world. Okay. So there are 3 or 4 different continents. Okay. Asia, Latin American countries, North Africa, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Okay. Worldwide 2011, this is for just 76 most food insecure countries, 814 million people. 814 million people, that's almost like 1 in every 7 individuals in the world are food insecure. Okay? And that number is going to go up 839 in another 10 years. Okay? That may not seem like the huge number, but certainly there is an increase. Okay? I mean, our goal is to bring that number to 0, but it's not. In the next 10 years, it's not going to happen because of the increase in the population and the various constraints we have on increase in food production. Okay. Here is a distribution. Where do they live? Where are food insecure people living? Okay. You can see mostly in the sub-Saharan Africa. Those are red. You can see that countries with more than 40% of the population being food insecure. Okay. Sub-Saharan Africa. And close to our home, to us, South America, countries in Central and South America. And you can see India, Mongolia, and in the Far East. There are several countries that are food insecure. Okay. This is another chart that kind of compares the percent of food insecure people to the total population, for example. Population share, like Asia, okay? Asia's population is about 66% of the world population, okay? And the food insecure, Asia's share in the food insecure population of people in the world is about 44 of 50%. That means half of people in Asia are food insecure. Another 44% comes from sub-Saharan Africa. So those are the 2 major pockets of food insecure population in the world. Okay. There is another popular indicator for measuring food insecurity. Okay, the one that I showed you earlier, that's the report from USD Department of Agriculture. But this one is from International Food Policy Research Institute. So they develop what's called Global Hunger Index. Okay, it's called Global Hunger Index, and this includes 3 components. Okay, and each of these components kind of represents those 3 pillars of food insecurity we talked about. Proportion of population that is undernourished. Okay, that's obviously an indicator of food insecurity. Prevalence of underweight in children under age 5, which is a direct consequence of being food insecure or being undernourished, right? And then mortality rate of children under age 5. There is another consequence. They checked the average of these 3 indicators and came up with a number. Okay? And based on this scale, they classify various countries. If you are above 30%, it's extremely alarming in terms of hunger. Alarming, and below 20% serious, between 10 and 20 is serious, and below 10 is moderate. Okay? Based on that, you can see the map. This graph tells you how we have been doing. Okay? Worldwide, are we improving? Are we solving the world hunger problem? Just based on this chart. Look at the left part. So did we do well? Have we done well? Moderate. Okay. Worldwide, in 1990 we started at 20%, 90.8%. Worldwide that number went down to 14.7. Okay. Which is not bad. We have done. Definitely we have made an improvement. In South Asia, okay, these are average numbers. It used to be 30, now it is 22. We are still in that alarming range in Asia. As I said earlier, 50% of the Asians are food insecure. Okay, but in other parts, sub-Saharan Africa, the numbers are very high, okay, and the number goes down. You can see the contribution of 3 different components of hunger here, hunger index, that is under 5 mortality rate, prevalence of underweight, and population proportion of undernourished. You can see that graph. There's a lot of details here, okay? And this table gives you the countries that have the highest hunger index, okay? So which the country, the top, this is 2012 number. Burundi in Africa has the highest hunger index. That's 37%. That means 37% of the population, are considered suffering hunger. Eritrea and Haiti, close to where we live. Okay, and then you can see the other countries as well. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
Haiti, is that before or after the natural disaster?
This is 2012. Okay. This is after.
Do you have a number for before?
We can find the numbers. I don't have it here. The numbers are available. The World Food Policy Research Institute puts out this number every year. Okay. So again, there are more numbers about this. Now, I think we'll. I would like to spend a few seconds on this chart here. Okay. Number of undernourished people in the world, 1969 to 2010. You can see that number. Okay. Some has almost remained the same. You see, in 2009 it cost billion. That's 10, 20 million. That's 1.02 billion people. Okay, that's in 2009. That is the direct effect of the price increases in 2007 and 2008. Okay, that's an important number to note. But more importantly, when we have the food insecurity problem, the type of people that suffer the most: women and children, farmers, rural people, and sub-Saharan countries, which we already saw. The important question to ask and to ponder about for a second: why women and children? Why are women and children the most vulnerable section of the society?
Least educated?
What's that?
They're the least educated?
They are least educated about?
Everything in general.
Okay. Okay.
Maybe it's probably because when usually in the poor sections of a society, these women, they tend to have a lot of children.
Okay.
And then the fathers sometimes are absent.
Okay.
And so if you're a woman, you have 6, 10 children.
Okay.
Of course you're going to be vulnerable because it's hard enough to feed yourself, much as these children.
Right.
Whereas the men, if they abandon these children, then they only have to worry about themselves, which is not as difficult.
So what you're saying is that we have deadbeat fathers everywhere.
Yes.
Right. Okay. You wanted to say something?
It's almost similar to what you were saying about women percent at some time period, at least targeted to being manipulated.
Okay. Okay. Right. Anything else? Why children? Yes.
Because they can't, well, usually they can't go and look for their own food. They can't.
Okay. They're basically stuck to their houses or farms or fields. They don't have that power to decide. Okay. What to buy, when to buy. They don't have that decision power. Okay. Education is an important factor too. No.
Because if you think about it, those same women,
Okay.
their male counterparts
Not
may have just as much education as them, so it's not even education really.
Okay.
Because if the women and the men are in that same bracket of society,
Okay.
educationally and economically and socially, then the education shouldn't be a factor.
Okay.
Not when comparing the two, that is. When comparing them to someone who's more educated, then sure.
Right.
But not when comparing the two sexes.
Right. But both husband and wife or father and mother not being educated could aggravate the problem.
Definitely.
Okay. Yes. Any other point? Okay. All right. So, and then we farmers. This is kind of an irony. Farmers produce food, but they are more undernourished. This is an item we can spend the whole semester on that. Okay, we don't have time. All right. I just before I continue, I just want to put this chart out. Okay, maybe thinking that this goes back to my question a while ago. How many of you really felt the pressure of food price increases? Okay, and I just saw one or two hands up there. But food insecurity problem is occurring in the U.S. too, and especially with the recent economic recession and all that. This number is going up. On an average, 9.1% of the U.S. population is food insecure. That was in 2010, and that number has gone up. Then if you look at particular certain sections of the society, low-income people, obviously, Hispanics in South Florida, Black Americans, okay, their number is even much higher than this number, 9.1%. Okay, sorry, 9.1 is moderately food insecure, and 5.4 is severely food insecure. Totally, if you put the number together, it's almost 40%, which is a high number. Okay. Now the next question is, when we are talking about food security and all that, again goes back to the first pillar of food security issue. Who are the producers of food? Where does food occur? Who are some of the major players in food production in the world? Okay, so here is the chart. You can see, right? China. This is only for food grains, by the way. I have the figures for other fish, meat, okay, and vegetable and other food sources, but I am putting here only just the main. In fact, this includes only the three major crops, that is wheat, rice, and maize or corn. Those are the three main staple crops, food grains in the world. And you can see that China, United States, European Union as a group, as a consortium, India, Brazil, Russia are the top producers of food. Okay. Now, this chart shows you the per person, which is again food availability. All right. Over the years, have we grown? And of course, the population has grown. Total food production has grown. In terms of, you can see, in terms of per capita or per person food production, since about 1980, we have stayed the same. It's not much increase. This is an important indicator of food availability, by the way. Okay. This is the world average corn, wheat, and rice yield. Okay. You can see that this is a good sign, right? So over the years, or per hectare, this is the per hectare yield of corn, wheat, and rice. As they should be. This is definitely a welcome sign. Okay. This is an interesting chart got from National Research Council. Okay. People ask how did we achieve that? We just said that over the last 15, 20 years, because of the green revolution, food production has increased. How did that happen? There are a number of factors, number of innovations and technologies that actually led to increase in food production, particularly food yield of different grains. This chart is only for corn. Okay, you can see from the 1960s, 70s. In the beginning, we had expansion in irrigated area, and also increase in fertilizer and chemicals. Okay, and then before that, we had all the hybrids, high yielding varieties, and then came the innovation in terms of managing the land. Okay, that is conservation tillage, soil testing, use of NPK, that's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium fertilizer. Okay, then the pest management, right? And then as we go further along, we had GMOs, that's genetically modified organisms, the seeds, that's very higher yielding varieties. So all these factors actually led to an increase in food production. This is all good, you know, there's no problem with that, okay? Now next comes the bigger question, all right? We're already seeing the strains on food production. We have already seen that there are a lot of people still who are food insecure. 1 in 6 or 1 in 7, you know, individual or person is food insecure. And now the question is, can we resolve that issue as we go along? Okay, we can look at some of the global picture first, and then go into more specific local issues later. Okay, does the food productivity continue, or is the green revolution over? That's the question. All right. I know some of you have taken classes in food and agroecology. What do you think? Can we continue this, or have you seen or heard or read about problems or limits to growth? That's the more popular expression.
I think it's over. I don't study agroecology, but I think that we're starting to wake up and realize that we have to conserve our resources. So I think that our generation right now, the one that's coming into the work environment, young professionals, are looking for more sustainable practices
Okay.
and different technologies. So I think that it's only really starting now.
Okay, started to see that limit.
But we're
You're
limited
saying
resources. on
limited
the planet,
resources.
So maximize it.
Okay.
More efficiency.
Okay, yes.
Even though if it's being productive and producing, aren't we feeding most of it to animals
Okay,
for our production?
okay. In production, yeah.
Sort of in the same vein of what she's saying, the problem is not that we're not producing enough food. I mean, there's enough food to feed like the entire world twice, but the issue is how the food is being spent. And it's not only the problem that it's being given to animals, a lot of it's being dumped. And a lot of the dumping has a lot to do with neoliberalization. Like, for example, an example I recently read about India was that there was a glut in the market in India for wheat, and there was like tons of wheat just rotting in government storehouses. But the government allied with, world markets interests, and they opened up the market for more wheat imports, and then that just drove all the farmers in India to ruin and raise the prices and then all these horrible things.
Okay, so there's an important point that you brought up. It's not just the production, okay? It's also what happens after the fact when the production goes to the market and the processing and all that. Yes.
Just to add to what she said about how the import-export of food, it really affects people.
Right.
I'm actually from Jamaica, and there, the fact that we're importing so much is affecting the country. It's affecting the food prices in the country. Because if we grow our own food, it's cheaper than if we import all of this food that's really not healthy.
Okay.
So it really depends. I think we need to focus more globally on each country being able to at least sustain themselves with the food, and then work on importing.
Food sufficiency,
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Then we'll after a few slides we'll get to that question. Is Jamaica or any country sustainable or can produce, has the capacity to produce food that it needs? Okay, I'll take here and then back here.
Just to add on to that, I've always had this kind of issue too. It's kind of appalling, especially in the United States. If you go to your local supermarket, Publix, for example, a lot of the produce is imported from other parts of the state. I remember I went once and saw an orange from California when we're supposed to be very famous for growing our own oranges. So it's actually cheaper to be importing than to actually domestically grow our own products, because especially now how organic food is way more expensive, even though it's not necessarily organic to be importing fruits, but it is, it's always an argument of whether or not domestically grown fruits is a more cost-effective way of producing food. But it shouldn't be the main focus. It should be about what you're being fed and what you're eating, and not about the cost of it.
Healthy
So-
choice. You would rather emphasize the choice and the quality of the food rather than the cost of the food.
Yeah,
Okay?
absolutely.
Okay.
Also, there are less people in the world, especially in this country, that are interested in growing their own food. A lot of those people are becoming farmers rather than
Are you saying more people are now,
less people.
less people
becoming farmers.
are becoming farmers? Okay. Right. There are a lot of numbers about that. Only 2% of the US population is actually in agriculture. The average age of a US farmer is 59, 60, 62 years, something like that. So that's an alarming number, by the way. A lot of implications for that. Again, we don't have time to go into that detail, right? Right. Okay, go ahead.
When you say the average age is 59, 60, are you referring to the actual farmer or the farm owner?
That's a good question. I don't know the exact. That's the number that's put out. You're right. There can be a difference. That may mean different. Most probably it's the farmer.
Yesterday,
Farmer.
someone brought up the, I mean, this is a little bit unrelated, but somebody brought up the whole problem of job security between
Okay.
Americans.
Okay.
And then they go into this whole, like, side argument about how these people from other countries risk their lives, risk their families,
Right.
come here, find a job,
Right.
and Americans are like, man, it's so hard to get a job.
Right.
And that kind of, I felt like that kind of goes back
Okay.
to this whole
Okay,
argument.
I see what you're getting at. This is like a farm owner. You asked that question. It's not about the workers.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not workers. It's the farm owner.
Farm worker,
Farm
When you say
owner,
farmer,
farm owner, not worker.
when you say farmer, it's usually referring to the farm owner, and then the workers usually
Exactly.
farm workers.
the laborer,
Yeah.
farm
And
laborer.
I started thinking about farmers who actually work the land, farm owner who work the land versus some farm owners who lease the land and leave the place. For example, here in Miami-Dade, we see a lot of this tomato land fields here, okay, in redlands and all. Some of them are actually cultivated by, operated by somebody from North Carolina or
60-year-old
Virginia
farmer.
who lease the land. Okay, so now we are talking about the owners here. Okay, and there was a question.
To answer, well, to maybe answer since I don't know the answer, but I'm curious to know, is there a link between, is the term monoculture, like there's been part of the revolution in food productivity was all these insecticides which aided the mass growth of only a few things, but does that contribute to the volatility in the food prices? For instance, if all Midwestern corn is susceptible to some strain of whatever of insect, I imagine that would both locally and worldwide have something to do with the prices we're seeing, the fluctuations in price. And to answer the second part of the question, is the green revolution over? I mean, there's been a trend to talk about like urban farming and urban agriculture, and I think that could be part of the answer in terms of that.
Very good, very good. Yes. Let me answer your second part later. I have a few slides. Going back to your first point, the biodiversity in agriculture and the yield. Yes, in the long term, there is a close relationship between biodiversity or multiple plant species, crop species, varieties, and the yield, long-term yield. Yes, and in a short-term basis, you may not find that the link, but in the long term, yes. We have an expert here in the room who has done some work on agrobiodiversity and this whole phenomenon called loss of pollinators.
The sudden
Right.
colony collapse.
Exactly. Colony disorder. Colony collapse disorder. Colony collapse disorder because of relying on few varieties of crops and applying chemicals, pesticides, and all that. That collapse is happening, which in turn is contributing to the reduction in yield also. Yes. Answer to your question is, question one is yes. Now, I'm going to just run through a few slides here. How much time do we have? 15 minutes. I'm quickly run through some slides. This will be available, later if anybody wants it. Okay, but these slides will give you some indications of the strain or the stress that you will see, or the limit to growth in food production, the strain that's occurring on food production. Number one, the land, right? You need land to grow crops. Okay, so this is a historical trend. Historical means really historical. We're talking about 6,000 BC here, and all the way to 2010. You can see that the croplands, which is the green bar, the middle one, okay, has increased over time. Since 1990, that number has stabilized, which means that we have kind of exhausted the total available in the cropland. Okay, if you want to increase that cropland, only way is to cut down forest and grassland and prairie, which has occurred, which we have done in the past. You can see that forest and other woodlands, okay, over the years, that's the first, the red bar, okay, it has gone down. The total area under forest has shrunk over the decades and centuries. Yeah.
I'm actually a little bit opposed to that. I want to use an example of Haiti. Haiti's 500 miles away from here in the United States.
Yeah.
They don't have forests.
Right.
They only have cropland.
Yes.
The only thing is that
Right.
there is no nutrients
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
that land.
Right.
During high school, I worked closely with a company called NGO
Okay.
called Sustainable Organic Integrated Livelihoods,
Yes.
Soil,
Yeah.
and they are trying to help the country's infrastructure by helping the soil itself, by fertilizing the soil. And the biggest forest left in the world right now is what? The Amazon?
Let me correct myself. I mean, I didn't mean to say that that's what we should do. I was just saying that that's the only that's the only way which we should not do. That is, by cutting forest and prairie is not the solution. Okay, that we have done that. What I'm saying is that we are now paying a price for having done cut down on forest with all the environmental and
But
implications.
they're still trying to do just that in the
Right.
Amazon,
Yes, exactly.
because that's a good thing.
Yes, exactly. Next part, water. That's the second major input is water. Okay, this is there's a famous talk, TED talk, on that's available online, given by John Foley from University of Minnesota. It's really an interesting talk. It's 20 minutes. Okay, you can see some of the science there, science of unsustainability, especially concerning food. This is Colorado River, which actually feeds millions of acres of land in the western United States, and I'm not sure exactly. This is in a certain part of the year, and certain section, of course, of the river, and you can see from 1950 and now the total amount of water that's flowing in the river has gone down. Another major environmental, this is a classic internationally known environmental disaster. Okay, is Aral Sea. I did put the name here. This is in Central Asia. Okay, and this sea is surrounded by probably 7 or 8 different countries. Okay, and all the years the various rivers flowing into the Aral Sea were actually dammed, for the purpose of irrigation and all that. You can see it from 1973 to 2004, and these are the pictures actually taken, I believe, by NASA. NASA also had similar pictures, by the way. Okay, you can see that the total area has diminished more than 50%, I believe. So when you have the shortage of water, obviously your future potential for irrigated agriculture is going to diminish. And this is about surface water we're talking. And countries like China and India, and even in the US, the underground water, that's one of the major sources of irrigation, also has diminished substantially, which could potentially influence the future food production. Land degradation, this is a worldwide phenomenon. When you cultivate the same piece of land over and over, in some cases 2 times, 3 times a year, obviously you're kind of mining the land. That's what's happening in Haiti, okay, and other countries as well. You continue to irrigate the same piece of land without any break, okay, that land is going to become more unsuitable for food production. And that has a lot of implications. We don't have time to go over that. Here there are some trends, some graphs that indicate the limit that we are reaching in terms of use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and also as a result, the yield, per acre yield, that's not occurring. Okay. Climate change is a major player that's going to influence food production. Climate change is going to cause, the scientists don't believe that, okay, more and more extreme events. It's either you have drought or you have floods, both of which can affect your food production. Climate change can also influence your growing season. Like, for example, a certain crop requires 120 days to grow, mature. Okay, scientists are expecting that period will shrink. The crop may mature only in 115 days or 110 days, which will have an effect on yield. When you have less growing time, as a result, the per acre yield is going to reduce. There's a very interesting study that was done by CGIAR recently. That's a consultative group on international agriculture research. They have developed a sophisticated model to indicate to estimate how climate change is going to affect each continent in the world in terms of food production. And these are some of the pictures from a popular book, an article by Lester Brown. Is one of the thinkers for food production, global food security, from World Earth Policy Institute. And that report, and you can see some of the interesting figures here. Rising temperature. For every 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature above the optimum, farmers can expect a 10% decline in grain yields. These are all based on various modeling studies and all that. Okay, and then we have a new dust bowl here. So probably some of you are aware of the history of the dust bowl in the United States. And here there may be, in this particular article, was shown that in China, Mongolia, and some part of Africa, the major dust bowls are occurring because of the continuous use of land, agricultural land for production and all that. And because of all that, now what's happening is that the food security now has become a global phenomenon, obviously, and also it has entered into global diplomacy. Okay, and it's not always, when you say diplomacy, it's not always present. Sometimes the outcome can be favorable, very transparent, but sometimes there are a lot of covert and or market-driven phenomena or activities that could take place. One of the interesting phenomena that's happening is what's called land grab. Now, the countries that can afford, as China here, for example, China, South Korea, United Arab Emirates, what they are doing, they have the money. What they are doing is to lease or purchase lands in other countries, okay, to produce food. So when that happens, obviously, that much land is out of the hands of the people, the citizens of the country or farmers of those countries. This has a huge implications in the future. Okay, and also world diplomacy, obviously, in the case of food, is leading into more and more food aid programs. For example, the USAID has a huge program called Feed the Future. Especially, USAID has a huge presence in sub-Saharan Africa, basically with giving food aids to people, which is not a pretty sign. I mean, ultimately, all countries would like to become food independent, but this is the reality. Now, I know I have only 3 minutes. I was given the warning here. In 3 minutes, okay. Think about, now you are aware about the food issues, insecurity issue, and I can see that some of you are already developing certain perspective. You have very strong and a good desire or view or positions about doing something about food insecurity issue. But you as an individual, you as a student, okay, or those who are working here as individual and citizens, okay, what can you do? What can you do? So, for example, if we ask the same question to the President of the United States, he will have a lot of power to do a lot of good things if he wants. If you ask the same question to the Congress, of course the Congress has much a higher power than you and I as individuals can have, but it doesn't hurt, or I think it's a moral imperative of every one of us to think about doing something about it, right? There are a lot of initiatives locally here right on campus. We have a wonderful program called Agroecology, okay? Which, it's a commercial here, all right? A lot of people are thinking about in this line. Agroecology as an approach to growing food more sustainably. That's something I can explain in 5 seconds that I have, all right? A lot of the literature on that, but what is happening here on campus, as Eric mentioned earlier, we have an organic garden, okay? At least, how many of you have visited the garden here? Okay, so good. Half of you have not. Well, at least, if you go there on Friday afternoon, you will always find people who can explain what's going on at the garden. And then if you become interested, definitely you will, you will be in touch with us or let us know what you would like to do. And I want to present that. This is one of the students who came out of the global learning classes. Okay, Randy, just and who he was in my class, and he got really excited about the food issues, global food security issues, and he decided to join the agroecology program. And this is a narrative. This is an article that came that has been published on the global learning website. It's written by Eric Rungman, and Randy also wrote.
Randy's first-person experience when he wants to check
Right.
it out.
Exactly. So this Randy's own experience in terms of having gone through the global food class, and then later he joined our agroecology program. He has a scholarship. He has exposure to variety of professional experiences, and of course, hands-on research, field work at the garden, and being engaged in the community to do related to food, and having research and internship experience at the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, and being able to interact with people who care about food, who care about sustainable food production. This is an interesting story if you would like to read. I have a lot more related to some of the actions that are taking place. I just want to make one comment here. You mentioned about the urban agriculture, okay? Urban agriculture. Again, I don't have slides or time here to show all the two possible, I'm not calling it alternatives, maybe like a desirable approaches to doing something about global food security. That is the agroecology or sustainable agriculture production I talked about, okay? That is to keep the environmental pressure of agriculture to a minimum extent. Then the other major aspect is urban agriculture, okay? That's something that you all can do. Either be part of a community garden or grow your own food, not to the fullest extent. Definitely you can't grow everything that you need in your backyard. It's something. Start with something, okay? That's a very desirable thing to do. Nationally, this urban agriculture is coming back. 56 after the World War or during the World War II, it was a very popular activity called victory gardens. Particularly women, children, and men who stayed in a home would be engaged in these community gardens called victory garden. And now this community garden concept is becoming very popular, especially as a component of urban agriculture. If you go to New York, there are more than 1,200 community gardens. Okay, Miami is just at the infancy. Okay, we have probably, you can count 20, 25 community gardens, including our own community garden here on campus. Okay, but this is something we would like to be involved in.
A huge problem in Miami though is that the communities that need these things the most are prevented from doing that because there's empty land.
Yeah.
Empty land, but it's private property, so they're
Yeah.
not allowed to farm on it.
Yeah.
And in some of these communities, like I know in in Overtown, there's a community, there's an urban garden, but none of the food that is produced there goes toward either the community or the people who farm the food. It all goes to this really, really expensive restaurant in South Beach. I don't remember what the name is, but like a little plate of food like this can cost you over $40, and the food costs. They don't pay the people who make the food a lot of
That kind of defeats the purpose, right? That kind of defeats the purpose of the concept of community garden.
Yeah. It just goes to make a lot of money for this restaurant who says their food is local, and because they say it's local, they can charge like a ridiculous amount of money for it.
There is a lot to, we have a long way to go. There's a group that's working on local food initiative. They're trying to improve, they're trying to persuade the local governments, including Miami-Dade County and some of the local municipalities, to change the laws in favor of local food production. Okay, so there's a local food policy council that's being developed. They meet every month. They have developed so many recommendations which are going to be presented to the local government. Hopefully things will change. Okay, you know what? But things will change by only one way. Okay. That is the people, ordinary citizens care. In Colorado, the citizens of the state force the state government to enforce this law called 10% shift local, something like that. That's the name. That means 10% of all the food consumption that takes place has to come from local sources.
I actually wanted to mention that earlier when someone was stating that our produce and our local supermarkets are coming from other sources, but how many of you recognize this yet not spoken to the manager of the supermarket or rallied to gather the people and say, we want local food, because it has happened and they do tend to increase their local food options when you make your desire known. It's up to the individual.
Exactly. Ultimately, the individuals. If you want cheap food, and that's what the market would love that. If you want, if you are willing to pay more for local food or organic food, and the market will react to that.
The problem is that, the market itself is what causes a lot of these issues.
Yeah.
And another thing is that poor people can't really afford
local
and even the less organic.
That's the topic for another global learning roundtable called fixing the food loopholes. About that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bhat.